Thank you so much. It's my great honor and privilege to be here in Bilbao once again. I'd like to thank everyone who has made this conference successful, and also everyone who has had any kind of organizing in the conference. And of course, I feel honored and privileged to be invited here. Can you see me? Am I tall enough? Or I should stand here? Okay. I'll speak about some of the risks that LGBT communities, especially in Africa, face while doing our work. And you'll allow me to specifically speak about Uganda because that is where I'm from, and that is the most information I have. So I just have this map that can help you understand where there is protection of LGBT persons and where there is no protection of LGBT persons, where there is criminalization and where there is no criminalization. So this map is from the ILGA, and it can be accessed as well as on the internet. I'll talk about my organization, which I'm very proud of and where I have worked since 2007. Sexual Minorities Uganda received the Renné Cassin Award. That's why I was in Bilbao 2 years ago. And I'm sorry I can't speak a lot of Basque, but at least I know Esker Casco. So again, I feel very privileged to be here once again. My organization does advocacy, and part of the advocacy is what I'll talk about in my presentation today. We do national advocacy, we do regional advocacy within Africa, and also we do a lot of international advocacy. We do research and documentation, and also we do capacity development because my organization is an umbrella organization of all the LGBTQ groups in my country. We provide safety and protection, which includes legal support, which includes housing, which includes support for trauma and counseling, and also medical. We also support cases of asylum of people who have left the country to go and live in other countries because they can't live in Uganda anymore. I wanted to give you a background of Uganda itself. Uganda is located in East Africa, which is neighbor to Sudan, Kenya, Rwanda, and Democratic Republic of Congo. We have a president called Museveni, who has been there for 33 years. And we used to have a very notorious president. Every time I travel in many countries and I say I'm from Uganda, they ask me, do you know Idi Amin? I'm like, well, I wasn't born when he was there. But we've had a notorious president called Idi Amin, who was very known for a lot of discrimination and cruel ruler. He expelled Indians from Uganda, and most of them moved to the UK. And also he killed very many people who disagreed with him. So we have a president now called Museveni, who has been there for 33 years. And he's been known for his very extremely homophobic views. He was one time asked by CNN, what do you think about homosexuals? He said, I hate them. They are very disgusting. So the background about the country, Uganda, is a very conservative religious country. About 85% Christian, more Catholic. So everything runs around religion in my country. So in 2009, we had a member of parliament introduce an anti-gay law which had a death penalty. And this picture you see here is the president of Uganda signing the law in 2014. So in 2014, the law was signed, but successfully, we were able to fight it. For only 6 months, we were able to overturn it in our Supreme Court, and it was removed. So you can see how extremely conservative the country is, that the president of Uganda called a press conference to sign an anti-gay law. And even after signing it, he was taken to one of our biggest stadiums by the churches to thank him for signing the law. So I want to talk about how when you talk about conservative issues in some of the communities, that is when again, politicians want to play a different agenda. When you talk about homosexuality in my country, that is when politicians say, no, this is our sovereignty. You shouldn't come and tell us what to do. But when you're bringing money, when you're bringing guns, when you're bringing other things, they welcome the international community. So you can see that when issues of human rights come in, that is when they want to create a backlash. But when it's issues of benefit, they don't want to say anything. I want to talk about, again, how Africa is seen in many parts of the world. I mean, when everyone is traveling to Africa from Europe, you have to take malaria medicine because we have malaria as a problem. And then when you go to Africa, be careful, don't get HIV and AIDS. That has been there. And now there's the new notion that homophobia is only in Africa. But the reason I have this picture is that homophobia is everywhere, it's around the world. And actually, all diseases are around the world. So again, Africa shouldn't be categorized as the only homophobic state and the only homophobic place to be. I want to talk about the issue of development aid and how that has been used as leverage for promoting the human rights of LGBT persons. So the issue of saying we're going to cancel aid, cut aid because of LGBT issues, it goes back to what I said earlier. This is when African leaders will come and say, why are you only talking about homosexuality when you're talking about aid cuts? And we have said that this is not very good because, again, it promotes an agenda that homosexuality is Western. And also, we are scapegoated and receive a lot of backlash when such things happen. We had one time the Prime Minister of the UK saying, I'm going to cut aid. And well, my president came and said, you can cut it. But again, does it mean that you shouldn't do anything? Because we have some conservative governments that will say, oh no, we won't say anything about a certain country because if we speak up, then we are going to be seen as foreigners. So there is ways of having this diplomatic engagement without having to make it a media issue. So is LGBT visibility foreign or not foreign? And I've said it many times. I've written extensively about how homosexuality has been in Africa many times. But what does it mean when our politicians say homosexuality is Western? It is brought in by the West. I came out at the age of 13. The question is, would I come out right now if I was 13? Of course, no. Because of the propaganda and the misinformation around homosexuality in my country. Because right now, if a 13-year-old boy came out and told their parents I'm gay, they will be persecuted, probably prosecuted, arrested, and taken to jail, or even expelled from home or from school. So, what happened in Uganda? Conservative society. The exposure of having freedom, body freedom, positive sex, all that, if you mix it up with faith and religion, the religious leaders have said, no, we can't have this. We can't have magazines talking about HIV and AIDS in the public. We can't have magazines that are extremely talking about body politics. We can't have magazines that express society as it should be. So the religious groups started coming into Uganda and saying, this kind of information, you shouldn't have it. So is homosexuality new to Africa, or homophobia is? And again, as you see, from the past, okay. So from the past, Uganda has had LGBT persons. And as I go on with my presentation, you'll see that coming down. But then what happens when all that mix up of Christianity, faith, ignorance, politicians, including the president, pushing back on LGBT rights. And then you have a very small, I have a picture, a very small group of activists trying to live trying to survive and trying to be who they are, you get extreme force. This picture that I have here is a presentation of how we try to have parade in Uganda. And then you can see the crash. We're having police coming in, wielding guns to just stop a group of about 200 people only. So what happens when there's propaganda, misinformation, ignorance, and then conservativeness is that the law enforcers crush any kind of difference that is happening in society. But what has been happening in Africa before all this conservativeness? This is a king from Uganda, from many, many years ago. This king murdered 45 Ugandans when Christianity was first introduced. And the history is that this king was bisexual. And the page boys he murdered were no longer accepting his sexual advances because they had turned into Christianity. So there has been history of homosexuality in my country way, way back, even before the missionaries came to my country. And what are we looking at now? Global anti-gay activists. People like Scott Lively, who came to my country in 2009, and they introduced information like gay people recruit children, homosexuality is a Western agenda. This is information that I did not know when I was 13. When I came out to my parents at the age of 13, no one said I was recruited. No one said it was because of television. And no one said it was because of boarding school. But these three Americans, when they came to my country, that is what they said in 2009. Meaning that the agenda of homophobia and transphobia is actually coming from the West to my very loving country, Uganda. So what we did, we sued this gentleman, Scott Lively, in America. And for the first time, the judge in the United States said persecution against LGBT persons can actually amount to crimes against humanity. So what happens again when you have a country that is 85% Christian and you bring a religious leader from America to come and preach to the 85% Christian and tell them homosexuality is evil, shouldn't be allowed, it's a Western agenda. In fact, there's a very funny story that was going on recently in Kenya where they brought a man from another country who looked like Jesus. And they told Kenyans, this is Jesus. And they were paying money to this man. So that's how gullible Africans can be when it comes to Christianity. So the result is that the public starts moral cleansing. Moral cleansing means killing, murder, beating people. Just this year only, we have had 4 LGBT persons murdered in Uganda. 2 of the cases are being investigated by the police. We have had people who have been murdered, they haven't been investigated at all. In a homophobic society, newspapers printing headlines like this, I definitely can't live in my house when such things are being printed. I've been in exile in Kenya for 3 months. Last year, I had to leave my house for 1.5 months because I couldn't stay there. Because people were sleeping dochmates under my door, will murder you. In this picture, you can see where they say 100 pictures of homos, top homos leaked. Hang them. They said, kill them. That's a bishop who supports us. And that's my colleague who was murdered right after this newspaper was published. Someone came into his house, beat him up with a hammer, and killed him. So when the moral cleansing happens because of this religious impunity and propaganda, the community acts. You see, demonstrations in my country to fight homosexuality, hundreds and thousands of people are going on the streets. I wanted to briefly take you to, after talking about a lot of discouraging information, then I have to talk about something nice. Because I know the question is, then how do you survive? Then how do you live in Uganda? I flew back yesterday from Uganda. I flew in here from yesterday. I flew here yesterday from Uganda, rather. And I'm going to Norway from here to teach a class on business and human rights. And then after that, I'll be going back to my country, Uganda. But how do I get into my country, Uganda? How do I even leave my country, Uganda? It's because of the international support. So the international support, and what does it mean? It means it creates a lot of security for us, creates a lot of visibility for us. As you can see, I just mentioned I received the Renné Cassin Award here in Bilbao, and the picture is there on the side. This kind of support, when I'm in Uganda, trying to go to the police station down in the village to rescue an LGBT person, then the police will not arrest me, because they know if I get arrested, there will be repercussions from the international community. When I took a picture with President Obama last year in November, this means that the Ugandan government is saying, I'm politically connected, then I won't be arrested if I'm trying to do work and to do lobby. And then the last two pictures, because these are two political pictures, and then the last two pictures, this is the coach of Manchester United. He came out publicly and said, I am supporting a campaign that I am running called Tackle Homophobia. So this is changing hearts and minds of people in Uganda, because he's not political, but then there are so many Manchester fans in Uganda who love him. So when they see the picture with me, they're like, oh, if he can tolerate and accept homosexuality, then I think I like gay people as well. So I had fans of Manchester United in Uganda speaking to me, and it's because that is changing hearts and minds. I don't have a musician from Norway, Kaigo. Kaigo is right now building an LGBT center in Uganda, which should be completed in January. So he's funding it. Part of the money he gets from his concerts, he donates it to my organization. And right now he's supporting an LGBT center. But this is changing hearts and minds, because when you use pop culture, sometimes you reach directly to the people. And what we do as political activists, we're trying so much to change the laws. But however much you change the laws, like you see, we had an anti-gay law in Uganda for only 6 months. It's not there anymore, and it was removed in 2014, but this year alone, we had 4 people murdered. Meaning, we need to work so hard at changing the mindset of the individuals to look at us as any other person. Because sometimes when I go and maybe meet with a member of parliament, sometimes they tell me, oh, you're the first gay person I've ever seen in my life. I've never talked to any gay person. And I tell them, no, I am the first gay person who has come out to you. But potentially, you've seen so many gay people in your family, but they haven't told you, because they can't tell you because they're scared of you. So, and then sometimes you talk to someone for like 30 minutes, I used to be very homophobic. Now I've changed. I'm like, no, you can't change in 30 minutes. You were just ignorant. You didn't have information. So getting in pop culture, celebrities and musicians and other people and entertainers to join our campaign and speak about these issues changes the hearts and minds of people. So I wanted to show you the use of social media. Again, in 2016, I was brutally arrested by the police, thrown into jail, tortured with my colleagues. And when I was in the police, I was pushed under the truck of the police, and the police were putting their feet on me. And the only thing I knew that could help me, even my colleagues not have been arrested, was to put up a tweet that I have been arrested. Soon as I put up the tweet that I've been arrested, the Ambassador Susan Rice, who was then the National Security Advisor for the Obama administration, saw my tweet and said, deeply concerned by the raid on Uganda Pride 2016, many detained, including Frank Mugisha. And immediately, the president called the police, and they were looking for where I've been detained. And then I was released within the next 4 hours. but after a lot of torture. So social media can be very important at some times in advocating for social rights. And you can see that even Ambassador Samantha Power also tweeted and said, I'm very happy with the release of Frank Mugisha from prison. So what happens then when there's high-level political engagement? You can see that the president of Uganda came down and said, anti-gay law could adversely affect Uganda's economy. That was after the law was removed, and then Parliament was trying to bring up another one, because our Parliament is not getting tired. They are saying we have to bring along homosexuality. And the president came out and said, sometimes this can affect tourism, it can affect LGBT persons from coming into the country as tourists, and also it will affect our bilateral relations with other countries. So in a way, that high-level political engagement sometimes works, especially if it is diplomatically driven. I wanted to briefly talk about something that we don't talk about so much when we're talking about advocating for human rights. That is the case for businesses and corporate accountability. As you can see, when we had the anti-gay law in Uganda, Barclays Bank and Citibank came out with a petition to the Ugandan government and said, this law could affect our profits. And as you know that most businesses understand profits. And the Ugandan government listened to the businesses more than they would listen to the politicians. And you can see that there are some businesses that have responded to homophobia and transphobia. Recently, we saw what happened in Brunei. And then also, for the case of Uganda, the president of Uganda was actually denied hotel accommodation. And then he released a statement and said, you can tell politicians what to do, but you can't tell businesses. All I need is a place to stay. I don't care about homosexuality. We had Vodacom and Orange Council advertising in a newspaper, a very homophobic newspaper. Pepsi Cola also stopped sponsorship of a very homophobic musician. And then the person who introduced the bill in Uganda that had the death penalty traveled for a conference like this, and one of the sponsors pulled out and said, I cannot be sponsoring such a conference where one of the speakers is the most extreme homophobic person in Uganda. And indeed, the conference was canceled because this was one of the big sponsors. So I wanted to end there, and thank you so much. Again, Eskerikasko. Thank you for having me here, and I hope it was a very nice presentation. Thank you so much.